had that idea and we started putting it into a 10-minute documentary. We showed it to a couple of friends and they basically kind of ripped into it and said it wasn't that good.
Welcome to another episode of In Conversation With. Today I have the amazing Jasbir Nangla, who has just screened with us at Bute Street 2024. How are you doing?
I'm doing good, thank you.
How was that whole experience for you?
It was pretty good. I think just seeing it up on the big screen, because I think as an editor, when you're tirelessly editing for so long on a tiny, well, it's not tiny, but your monitor isn't, cinema screen.
Yeah.
And then when you've seen it blown up like that, I think it does change the way you view your own film.
Yeah.
And I'm way more critiquing it just because I could see all these little bits. But at the same time, I think I can enjoy it a bit more there than I can at my own PC, for example.
Oh yeah, I get that, because I guess it's in a situation that you're building it for.
Yeah.
So like the cinema screen is what you're actually editing it for, as opposed to your Mac.
I think it's more the people.
Okay.
Because me just watching it by myself or just with a couple of people at home is one thing, but then having a whole crowd of people there, good or bad, talking about it and thinking about it and being inspired by it or whatnot, is part of what I enjoyed about making it.
Because I was there during the screening, I know there was a bit of, the first question was tough out the gate.
Yes.
I was like, wow. Usually that comes on the third day, but
Yes.
it's like, we're not warming up in 2024, we're literally going right in.
Yes.
But the question's twofold.
Yeah.
How did that feel? And also, is that not the reason why you started making documentaries, to create those conversations?
Yes. That's why I didn't want to stop her from having that conversation or letting her opinion come out. Because when I thought of it, it was like, first it was like, how do I react? Because it's kind of your knee-jerk reaction is to be a very defensive.
Yeah.
But obviously you shouldn't do that, because that doesn't look good. So I do like hearing that, and I like hearing from other people's perspective. And it's just it's basically how you interpret it, because it's just, she's a person herself,
Exactly,
she's got her own thoughts and feelings, So it's like, how is she looking at it? Because I've got a very different opinion on it, because I've been spending so much time with it. So how does another person see it?
Yeah.
I think it's a teaching lesson, because it's not going to be the first one.
No.
There's going to be plenty of them. I want to be good at doing that. So it's like, come at me. Come at me.
I like that, because it's like, I've always said, I'd prefer for any work that I create to either be loved or hated. I would hate to have a kind of, a neutral kind of reaction to it, like, it's okay. Yeah. And I think that's the amazing thing, because I watched it earlier. That was an amazing kind of screening you did prior to the festival.
Yes. Thank you for coming.
And I know there was this question about, you kept on saying, please tell me if you love it, if you hate it, I want to know.
Yeah.
And I think that's when you know you're doing something right, when you're creating those conversations. Whether it's seemingly on the surface, seemingly is negative or positive, I think that's your work as a filmmaker. And I like it, because I think something you said really stuck with me. You and your brother, in fact. I can't remember if it was you or your brother, but it was about, this is only a little small section of our story of what we're trying to capture.
Yeah.
Do you use that in terms of people's feedback to kind of inform your next work, or do you have these thoughts in your head already?
I already had those thoughts in my head, but I had to just go. But yes, and it does inform how I go ahead in the future. Because essentially I understood that I missed so many parts of it. And so in between when we submitted this film and now, we've started to fill in those gaps. We started to record more people and actually film and create videos and stuff that essentially kind of fill the whole thing. So the documentary never finished. Yeah. It's been going on in just smaller, more standalone videos by itself.
Yeah, because you said it's the tipping off, so it's literally the start of it. Just for context, during the festival, there was a real strong reaction from a member, attendee rather, who felt that the documentary didn't speak to the whole community of Luton, and she felt as if a part of the community had been slightly marginalised from that story. But I felt you guys handled that amazingly well. And like you said, in the way that you kind of reacted to it was hearing what she's saying, but also your process that didn't throw you off, and it's like it was great that you had already thought about that next step. That wasn't how I was going to start this interview, but it was a great kind of look into it, because one of the things I love, and I think I posted about it recently, is that I love hanging around with really talented people. Not because I just like to be around people that are way more talented than me or greatness and stuff. I just love digging into people's processes and kind of how they started, their drivers and stuff like that. So I know you're a duo with your brother. How did that start? What was that kind of acorn moment where you was like, let's make films, and not just films, but let's make documentaries?
It was through making this documentary, because like the actual start of the idea, the seed of it, comes from my brother first. So he was the one who wanted to make a documentary. He was the one who was inspired to create that story. Yeah. And so when he says this to me, I'm like, okay, let's make it happen. How are we going to make this happen? Where are we going to go? Where are we going to show it? All right, Bute Street Film Festival is a Luton Film Festival. All right, this is a Luton documentary. All right, that's brilliant. All right, when's the last submission? Yeah. January. All right, cool. Need to start. So essentially, you can start realizing what my role was. Yeah. And what his role was. Yeah. He was really instrumental in creating the story and connecting all these little pieces and the little pockets of communities. Yeah. And it was my job just to film it and edit it in the way that you see.
So you guys were kind of filmmakers in that space already, and this was just an idea that came up?
No, actually, yeah, I should actually explain the context a little bit. Yes and no. The only things that we were doing before that point were small YouTube videos. Okay. Yeah. And after that point, so when we started making the documentary, we didn't really know entirely where we were going. And like I said, the only stuff that we had done before was just YouTube videos. Some of it's pretty good, some of it's not, and I've taken elements from that, but it's very different from the stuff we do now and what that documentary is. And it's purely through making that documentary, discovering how to do it, did we come up with the idea. It basically gave us the model for our whole business, for a whole company, of who we are now. Yeah. So it's very instrumental to our start and our beginning, and it is basically our start, if you think about it like that.
And also, like, I know one thing that you've always mentioned is about your process of getting those contributors is just emailing loads of people and seeing who replies and says yes. Yeah. That to me sounds, from a storytelling point of view, sounds like fresh hell. Because it's like, you're kind of working backwards, getting these interviews and then figuring out what the story is behind it, as opposed to walking into it and say, okay, these are the contributors, this is how I can tell that story. So how was that process for you? Basically, obviously you're reaching out to quite a few people, you finally get a bunch of people together, some maybe in the same kind of creative sphere or industry. How did you then, after you capture that footage, craft that story? Because you've done it quite well. Yeah. It feels quite curated. Yeah. But I know you kind of tried your luck in terms of reaching out to people and seeing who you can actually get.
So yeah, I think it was a process of reaching out, like basically throwing it at the wall and seeing what sticks in terms of who I can film, and then kind of coming back and figuring out through the pieces that we've collected. Yeah. And you know, I'm not gonna lie, it's partly to do to you and your slight influence. Okay. So when I did, see, this is what I mean about messaging and emailing people, I asked you for advice about submitting to this film festival. Okay. And one of the two things I remember you saying is make sure it's a good story and make sure it's at least under 10 minutes, just so it's more likely to be submitted. I completely understand why. So with that in mind, that created this need to keep it streamlined. To keep the whole story streamlined, because otherwise it would have been a 45-minute mess. Yeah. And I don't think that would have worked, and I don't think people would have enjoyed it. And so what happened was we had that idea and we started putting it into a 10-minute documentary. We showed it to a couple of friends, and they basically kind of ripped into it and said it wasn't that good. We were like, okay, we're in the 1st of January, we need to submit this in the 31st, what are we gonna do? We started going back on our old notes and our old archive and stuff we had collected beforehand, And we found some archive videos, the Luton 76 documentary video. We found that, and we actually found the entire 40-minute documentary. Watched the whole thing. It's a really good documentary. It's free online, so I do recommend watching it if you ever get a chance, because I've kind of painted it in a bad light, I think. But we realized that what that documentary did and what that documentary could do for us is essentially, is essentially tell our story in a way that encompasses all of it. Yeah. So like we had all these pieces, like you said, we just didn't know how do we connect all those pieces. And it's that part, that the past that helped us connect all those pieces. So finding that archive footage and connecting that to the edit, and then when we finally put that all together, that is kind of what we had, and then we obviously tied it up and everything. But yeah,
that's really cool. And it's like, I don't know, I don't remember giving you that advice because I think I say it a lot.
You must do.
Because for me, story is king. Because I get a lot of people do ask me kind of like what they should do with their story. And I think a story is a story is a story. I can't sit down and say what is a good or bad story, because everyone has their own experience and they have their own story to tell, and that everything's valid. But if you're asking me in the sense of how can I get my story into a film festival, that's what I can advise you. For me personally, it's always story's king, and then under 10 minutes, 10 minutes on max.
Yeah.
Because it's a logistical thing.
Yes.
More than thing as well.
I get that 100%.
So I'm glad I helped.
Yeah, no, I'm so glad that
what's
you
my
gave
credit
me
in the film? Because I don't remember.
I should do that. I should actually do that, you know. That's a good thought.
No, it's cool. So what's next?
There's a few things that are next. In terms of filmmaking, I'll focus on that, because then I could just be here all day talking about all the things that we've got going. The next documentary that we're going to do that has a very strong focus on Luton is a documentary about Harry Batt. Okay. Do you know who he is?
I do not.
Okay. So to briefly run over it, because it is a quite long story, Harry Batt was one of the coaches for the Chiltern Valley, the women's Chiltern Valley's football team. So it was a football team back in the early 60s that he sort of just cobbled together. Really great ladies, blah, blah, blah. And he's a really ambitious man. So he got together a bunch of other people and organized a World Cup in 1971 in Mexico. It was completely unofficial. FA didn't approve of it, but they just did it anyway. And the people who owned the stadium were just like, yeah, let's do it, because, you know, it's a big event, like, let's do it. It was super huge, loads of people came, but the problem was, after all of that, oh, by the way, PS, England didn't win, but it doesn't matter.
I am shocked.
It was kind of buried. This whole story, you didn't even know that in Mexico, a bunch of women played an unofficial World Cup, but it sounds less than it is, but if you see the footage, it was huge. Like, wow, this was a lot of people that were there to see this. But it was completely buried by the FA. And when Harry Batt comes back with all those players, like, keep in mind, these are just like 20-something girls that were just wide-eyed. Oh, I'm actually being accepted for my gender and what I'm doing. I can play football and the whole world is watching me. Come back to England and no, you've all been banned. You no longer can compete in any FA games. You can't play in nothing. And Harry Batt got the worst of it. He couldn't even go watch any football anymore. Male or female, it doesn't matter.
How do you ban someone from watching football?
Yes, it was really heartbreaking. And like I said, he was a very ambitious man. And after that, it kind of just broke him. Yeah. And the story we actually want to follow is with his son. Okay. And he carries that torch. He carries that flame on.
That's an amazing kind of perspective to take it from, because obviously kids actually see things more than you kind of realize, and obviously they have a different perspective of it and a different emotional kind of journey with that.
He was 8 years old when they went to Mexico.
Mad.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
So he saw all that. He saw all the players, and he saw his dad go from a wide-eyed, ambitious man to a cold, just quiet, nothing of a man. I suppose.
What's your drivers like with your stories? Because it's amazing, and that both stories in terms of you following that Luton story, using the football club going to the Premier League as a driver for that story, but that just being a small element of it, to this story, which, okay, it has an element of sport in it, but it's a different emotional journey.
Yes.
What is your, when it comes to making work, what is your drivers? Is it just a great story, full stop, or is there an arc to your thinking when it comes to what stories you want to capture?
I think because coming from my perspective as someone who's not always doing the story, I kind of just leave my brother to do that part.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about the actual people.
Mm-hmm.
So Keith, for example, is the son of Harry Pat, and now I just want to make this documentary for him.
Yeah.
And then previously, you saw it at our little premiere that we did a documentary for the Luton Library Theatre.
Yeah.
Again, I just really cared about them,
People.
and I just wanted them to see it.
Yeah.
It's just about people,
Yeah.
and just showing people things. I guess it's weird to say it like that, but the thing that inspires me and keeps me driving forward is working with these people, and they inspire me to carry on moving forward.
Now, that's amazing. So, just to finish off, I had one of the volunteers ask me, what is the ethos of the festival? Like, what is like the foundation of what we're trying to do? And one thing I said is that we want to get to a stage where 50% of what we're showing are local filmmakers, local artists, local musicians. And so when I saw your submission, I was excited. And I was like, please let it be good, please let it be good, please let it be good. And it was amazing. So genuinely, that's why I wanted to speak to you in person and have this meeting with you, because I'm excited about the work you're doing. I'm excited about the quality of what you're doing, your storytelling, your eye as a filmmaker, you and your brother. And I'm really excited to see the next thing that you do. So please send it through to us, because to be able to have you guys representing the town as a whole, but also even representing like, you know, minority groups and raising those stories and kind of, I don't know, just being those drivers in those stories, I think is so important. So thank you for listening to the festival. Thank you for coming. I hope you're enjoying yourself.
Yeah.
I hope you watch the rest of the program that we're going on rather. But yeah, I just want to say congratulations, because the work you've done is phenomenal. Everyone I've spoken to loves your work. Continue doing what you're doing.
Thank you. Honestly, I want to say one thing. Thank you for putting this film festival on. Because I remember meeting you years ago when you did it not in Bute on your first year. And you've carried it on. You've carried it on. And now it's to a point where it's got a lot more.
Yeah.
It's got so much more, and there's a lot more attention to it. So like, honestly, congratulations for keep pursuing that. And I'm glad to be a part of it.
No, absolutely. I can't take all credit for it. I've got an amazing team.
No, it's not just you.
I've got an amazing team who've been stuck with us for 6 years now. So, yeah, we do it for amazing filmmakers and creators like yourself. So, the more you create, the more you do, the more we can do. So,
Brilliant.
Thank you.
No problem. Thank you.